Okay, so it seems like we have a few people here already. Um, Miss Angie, Director of Counseling Services, is going to join us in a minute. She accidentally turned her computer off. Um, but welcome to the Science of Happiness, a workshop series that we're going to kind of go through throughout the semester with different topics. Today, the topic is happiness, and I am your host today. My name is Alyssa Garza. I am a undergraduate student here at LSUS. I'm a sociology major. I work in the counseling office, and I'm also a certified peer educator on campus. That's a whole nother story in itself. Kind of doing a lot of things on campus, including like Active Minds, a new organization that we're starting, and the peer educator program itself is also something that if you're interested in, you should definitely let us know. Um, Anyways, I guess we can get started. So we're kind of going to be talking about the 5 pillars of well-being, the PERMA model, which kind of consists of positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So also feel free to unmute yourself and join in on the conversation or type anything in the chat. I'll have to bring that up too so I can, oops, see it. Okay, so first, I'd like to start by asking everybody a question of what you think happiness is, or what happiness is to you, what it looks like, or what it feels like. Like I said, you can put anything in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Um, I guess I can start. Um, for me, happiness kind of consists of like joy and contentment for me. I guess I can kind of see it in like that feeling that I kind of feel light. I feel good about the day or something like that. But that's just for me. And it's kind of a fluid concept. So you can kind of interpret it in the way that you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a feeling, it can be an action, it can be internal, external. Piper said love, if that makes sense. I think that makes sense. Because I mean, love makes you happy. I mean, you feel love and you're like, you know what, that made me feel good about myself. So I think, yeah, that's definitely incorporated into happiness. Um, but yeah, the idea is that, it can kind of be interpreted any way that you feel is necessary or what feels like happiness to you. Um, so I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so anybody that's like a mathematician, this might be kind of intriguing to you. There's kind of like this formula for happiness. And this formula kind of breaks down the factors that influence how much happiness we are able to endure, because not everybody's the same. So it's H equals S plus C plus B. H is obviously happiness, and that's the enduring level of happiness. S is the sum of genetic capacity for happiness. So that's kind of like whatever influential genetics we have. C is the circumstances and conditions of living. That's kind of like your environment, anything around you. And then we have V, voluntary choices and actions that are within our control. So that's kind of like what we do every day. And all of these factors play into our ability to endure happiness, which we have to consider once again that we're not all the same and we can't all endure the same amount of happiness. So here's a little graphic of kind of that breaks down the percentage. So 50% of happiness comes from our genes. 40% is from ourselves, so within our control, and 10% is our circumstances. So that's kind of like, our environment, things like that. So we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so here's kind of this graphic that the gears are kind of like symbolic in a sense. So a part of our part in our own well-being. So we kind of have to put in these factors into consideration when we're talking about well-being. And this is kind of more specific to the 40% of what we can control. So if we can control if we live a meaningful life by finding purpose and impacting others in the world. Also, we have our growth for capacities and our grow capacities for, excuse me. And that's like love and compassion, creativity and curiosity, work and resilience, integrity and wisdom. And those are kind of like our values. And our values have a lot to do with our happiness because that's kind of what we drive off of. And then these all kind of work together to kind of cultivate the best version of ourselves. And that kind of consists of our choices, behaviors, and habits. And that's also everything that we have control over. So pretty much that living a life in line of your values is what's going to cultivate your happiness. Because if you're not living in line with your values, you're not really living, for yourself, I guess you could say. And this kind of ties into here. Let me go here. Oops. There we go. Okay, and these are the types of a happy life. So we have a pleasant life, and that's the enjoying daily pleasure, having as many pleasures as you can, learning the skills to expand and increase them. The good life is knowing what your highest strengths are, recrafting recrafting everything you do to use your strengths as much as possible and as often as possible. The meaningful life is contributing to greater good, not only using your highest strengths, but also deploying this in service of something bigger than yourself. And we draw meaning from multiple sources. So here, I kind of like to go back and look at everything kind of ties into the things that we are good at, like our strengths and anything that we enjoy. So it's kind of important to think about that, because if you're not including things that aren't your strengths or something that you aren't good at, you're not likely to enjoy it, if that makes sense. So if you're working towards a degree and you're not really passionate about, the classes you're taking or the subject itself, you're not really contributing to, a pleasant life, a good life, or a meaningful life. So that's something that we have to kind of take into consideration and really think about our strengths. Okay, and then this kind of ties into flourishing also. And here's a really good little concept here. So surviving is very different than thriving. And what I mean by that is, if you're surviving, you're not really thriving. So I guess how I can explain this. Every day when you're, for example, if you're going to class, and if you're just barely making it through your classes, worried about, what's the next day or what's the next class you have, and you're not really into the class or the subject, you're kind of just surviving and you're trying to make it through the day, where you're not really thriving. And here's a little, okay. So being in a state of mental health is not merely being disorder free, it's also the presence of flourishing. So if you're only trying to survive, you're most not like thriving, and you're not really growing and learning. And thriving allows you to live with the presence of happiness and positivity. So we also have to think that thriving, but in the presence of positive characteristics. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is the kind of the model that we're going off of for this presentation is the PERMA model. P is for positive emotions, E is for engagement, R is for relationships, M is for meaning, and A is for accomplishment. And that's kind of the entire concept of well-being. So let's see. So different people will derive a well-being from each of these 5 building blocks to varying degrees. A good life for one person is not necessarily a good life for another, because everybody is different. And there are many routes to flourishing in life, and positive psychology is descriptive and not prescriptive. In other words, we're not really telling you how to live your life or how to achieve happiness. It's more, how can you apply all of these factors to your life to achieve, whatever your concept of happiness is. So let's see. So the first one we have is positive emotions. So that's the feeling good factor. And then we have this idea of the past, present, and the future. So the past kind of consists of gratitude and forgiveness, and the present is savoring and mindfulness. And the future is hope and optimism. So we're kind of going to focus a little bit on the present, but before I do that, I'm just going to talk about each of these for a little bit. the past can kind of consist of like cultivating gratitude and forgiveness. So that can be, okay, let me think of a past experience that I can actually say, you know what, I forgave that person. I can move on from that and grow from that. The present here is savoring the moments. And we'll actually do a little activity on that in a minute. But and in the future is like building hope and optimism. So let's be optimistic about tomorrow and things like that. Let's see. Okay, so for the savoring kind of moment and the positive emotions, we can kind of look at like our careers. So do you get to use your talents and strengths in your current role? And that kind of has to do with the idea also of using our strengths and actually thriving and not just surviving. So kind of take a minute and kind of like identify the people and events or the things that you pleasure or that give you pleasure. And kind of see how you can incorporate those positive emotions that you feel in those situations. And you can kind of incorporate those into your daily routine and to ensure that you're actually doing these things and you're not just putting them off for another day. So for our first exercise, and you can either write this down or you can just think about it in your head. Remembering or savoring good events is a way to re-experience them and re-experience these strong emotions mentally. So, and anybody can share what they're thinking if they want to. Remember a positive experience. So for example, you can think of what did you do last weekend that was really good, or last year or anything like that. And notice positive experiences as they happen. Like what is something good in your life today? And then anticipate positive experience. What are you looking forward to next weekend? And this kind of goes with the past, present, and future idea that you want to kind of understand that every event from the past, present, and future can kind of incorporate these positive emotions. It doesn't have to just necessarily be today. Okay, and then let me go here. This is a little bit better of an example. So if anybody wants to chime in, this is kind of the 10 types of positive emotions. And you can see they have joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. And we kind of have a little phrase that kind of helps guide you into like what you can think or of how you can tie in an experience. So for joy, for example, is I was really happy when. So
I'll give an example.
Okay, thank you, Miss Angie.
I can think of when I was working on my master's thesis and I went through a divorce, and it took me like 3 or 4 years to finally finish that. And it was a lot of work, and my thesis director chair of the committee was a professor, and he gave me a compliment. He wrote it on his feedback. He said, "This is the best thesis I've read in 10 years. You have to publish it." And I thought, wow, I was like jumping up and down. It was like few states. I was a few states away. So it was just his written comments. But it was so satisfying because I had been through so much to finish it, and for it to be, received in a positive way. That's a satisfying feeling that literally made me feel like jumping up for joy.
Yeah. And I think that it's important because, I mean, obviously you still remember that till this day. So it's something that you can still bring positive emotions out of.
Yeah. And I'm right now just talking about it, feeling this physical sensation in my body.
Yeah.
And remembering what that joy felt like.
Right. And like that idea of savoring, you're really savoring that experience. I mean, you can remember all the details of it. So I think that's a great example, Miss Angie. Thank you for that. Okay, and I guess we can go ahead and move on. Oh, okay. Well, let me say this really quick. There's this ratio that we have here, and it's kind of explains that when we have 3 positive emotions for each 1 negative emotion, our life improves a lot. So if we can pick 3 things that happened that were good today, and okay, maybe there was 1 thing that went wrong, but those 3 positives are going to outweigh the negative in a sense. So that's something we can kind of do daily.
And you have to do that with intention.
Right.
Like if you do that on a regular practice, it can make you have more optimism and feel better, and just your emotional experiences, that those negatives don't have as much impact.
Right. Okay, let's see. And go here. Okay, so if this was a face-to-face sort of workshop, we would have had sort of like a pre-assessment to kind of test where you're at on the PERMA model. And so these are the statements that you would have rated from on a scale from 5 to 1, 5 being very much like me and 1 being not like me at all, to kind of see where you're at on the PERMA scale. And these are specifically for positive emotions. So how would you rate these? And you don't have to say it out loud, but so I feel joyful. So would you rate that? Okay, that's kind of like me. So I'd give it like a 4. Others say I look happy. I notice good things in my life and feel thankful. I feel relaxed. I laugh heartily. And if your score is on the higher scale, then you're probably showing good signs of positive emotions in your life in this PERMA model. If it's a little bit lower, that might be something that you need to work on or improve on. And you can kind of tie into that ratio of, intentionally, identifying the 3 positives, and that kind of outweigh that 1 negative. And then we can go to engagement. And there's this idea of finding flow. And so engagement is an experience when someone fully develops their skills, strengths, and attention for a challenging risk. And this produces an experience called flow that is so gratifying that people are willing to do it for their own sake, rather than for what they will get out of it. And the activity alone is its own reward. And there's kind of this idea also that, it can't be too challenging, but it can't be too easy for you, because then you're not really getting that flow, you're not getting that engagement. For example, if you're really good at math, and you take a, I don't know, like a 100 algebra, that might not be as challenging for you. And it's not really engaging because you're like, oh, this is easy. I don't really want to do this. So that kind of chimes into the idea of flow. So we have fully engaging skills, strengths, and attention for a challenging task. Concentration, fully absorbed in the moment. You kind of lose your sense of self. Time's distorted or it stops and you're in the zone. And then for its own sake, activity is its own reward. Balance, skill level matches challenge, effortless and ease, immediate feedback on progress toward goal. And some examples would be good conversation, work tasks, creation, and hobbies. I think we can all kind of relate to this because, if you don't really like football, you might not be engaged in the TV versus, somebody in your family may love football and be yelling at the screen. There's kind of a good example. And then there's a good graphic here that kind of explains the idea of flow. So if something is too challenging, you kind of get anxious about the idea that, okay, this might be too hard for me. I can't really do it. You're not really engaged in that. And then if it's too easy, it shows, and you incorporate a lot of your skills into something that's way too easy, you just get bored and you're not really engaged. So you kind of have to find something that meets in the middle, something that's a little bit challenging, but also not too challenging. And let's see. Okay. So then for here, that's how would you rate these? And that's kind of the same idea with that pre-assessment. How would you rate these in regards to engagement? I know my strengths, I pursue activities that use my strengths. I use my strengths to solve my problems. My concentration is good during activities that use my strengths, and time passes quickly when I'm engaged in activities that use my strengths. Okay, and then here's the exercise for this one is I felt wonderful. And so this is where you kind of choose an experience from your life when you felt successful, very happy, loved, or thankful. And you kind of want to engage the idea of this and kind of reiterate kind of the positive emotions. And all of this kind of ties together. I mean, it really ties in with our next letter also that we're going to go over. But kind of think about when this experience happened, like who were you with? What did you do? What did you say? What happened next? And where were you? And how did you feel? So I don't know if anybody wants to share anything about this, but just kind of choose that experience and kind of ask those questions. And if this were in person, you'd probably do it with somebody else where you would kind of go back and forth. But Yeah. Does anybody want to share anything? Okay, that's okay. We can move on. You can always do this. If you watch it again and do this with yourself, that's okay. So here we have this idea of active constructive responses that kind of ties into that other activity. So people who ask questions that are kind of like the who, what, when, where, or why help recreate feelings of these experiences and make you feel good. They also develop better relationships with whoever is asking them. So here's a little visual that will help. So the idea of this is that if you ask questions like, let's give like an example. Let's say you get like a promotion at work, and then we can kind of follow this and say, okay, so let's go to passive destructive. So you say, oh, hey, you go home and you tell somebody, hey, I got a promotion. And someone says, huh, well, I just got a new video game. Well, that kind of turns their focus inward. They're avoiding what you're saying and you're kind of ignoring the speaker. And then that kind of makes you feel kind of bad. They're not excited like you are. So then you can kind of go over to, let's see, active destructive. Okay, so you tell them, hey, I got a promotion. I don't believe you. It sounds stressful. Okay, well, that person is kind of being dismissive and demeaning, kind of invalidating how you feel. And that's also not a very good feeling.
I just want to get people to think about remembering a time when someone made them feel that way.
Right. Yeah.
That's a crappy feeling.
It is.
Share something that you're excited about.
Yeah.
And you're probably sharing it with someone that is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not good.
They're like, yeah, that's fine. But guess what happened to me today? They don't even want to hear what you have to say.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go to the active constructive. So this is what we want to hear, and this is what we also want to, give back to people is active constructive. So you say, hey, I got a promotion. Great news. I knew you do it. How do you feel? So they're kind of asking that question so you can kind of relive that moment and re-experience those positive emotions. That goes back to engagement and then the positive emotion aspect. And they're giving you enthusiastic support, eye contact, and they're being authentic. And I think that's really important because you don't want somebody to just be like, oh, cool. I knew you do it. You want them to actually feel like, you know what? Wow, she really deserved that. Because it makes you feel good when somebody feels good about.
Let's practice it.
Okay.
So Alyssa, I'm going to use an example in your life recently.
Okay.
So you worked really hard and you wrote a proposal for this project, this year-long project. And it got accepted. So It's the Peer Education Leadership Project. So tell me what it felt like when you heard the news.
When I heard the news, I honestly was like, I couldn't believe it. Like I felt like this wasn't real. Like it was kind of unreal. But then I kind of was like, wow, like this is real. And I felt like, I felt joy. I felt like, wow, my hard work really paid off. So, and when I kind of think about that every day, and then especially when I tell other people, like my family or that, they're like, wow, like that's awesome. Like, what do you get to do? Like, what's your next step? And that kind of makes me think like, wow, like all of these people really care about what I'm doing. It made me feel good about like, like this is a big deal. So I think I get a lot of active constructive responses, which I'm very grateful for. And especially from Miss Angie. She likes to send all my accomplishments out on emails, and that makes me feel very good.
Yeah, you got a few cheerleaders in your life.
Yes.
So was I the first person you told?
I think so. Yeah, you were.
Yeah. And I think I remember you jumping up from the email and walking into my office to tell me, and I was super excited. And I emailed it to a bunch of professors, and then the next thing, our media department wanted to cover it. Yeah. And then it was on the news. Well, how did that feel?
That was kind of like, oh, wow. I was a little caught off guard. I didn't think it was going to go to the news, but it was a really good feeling. Like I kind of felt like I was nervous because I was like, wow, this is something really big. Like I never have experienced something like this, but it's definitely something I know I'm not going to forget because of how much support I got from it. So
yeah. And if all we did is say, oh, cool, good for you.
Yeah, that would have been kind of like,
You know, you
Would hurt.
can't depend on other people to validate things. You need to be able to be your own cheerleader
Right.
too.
Mhm.
But when you're talking about helping someone get back into the flow of a positive experience, you're trying to help them re-feel those feelings.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it'll get into the next strategy, but
Mhm.
about relationships, how you want to make people feel in your relationships, but it's also just a practice in engaging in revisiting and savoring those positive emotions.
Mhm. And we'll move right on over because that is pretty much the next one is relationships, or authentic connections. And relationships are fundamental to well-being. The experiences that contribute to well-being are often amplified through our relationships. For example, joy, meaning laughter, a feeling of belonging, and a pride and accomplishment. Connections to others can also give life purpose and meaning. Support from connection with others is one of the best antidotes to the downs of life and a reliable way to feel up. And from an evolutionary perspective, we are social beings because the drive to connect with others and serve promotes our survival. So that's something to really think about, that we're kind of made to like have these relationships and make these relationships. Um, and our strong relationships are kind of enabled by capacity for love, compassion, kindness, empathy, teamwork, self-sacrifice. Um, and I'm going to go right into this exercise because I think this one really kind of helps us tie this all together. So think of somebody or someone or something special that's in your life, and think about why they are special. What did they do and why do you want to say thank you? And I guess I can kind of start out with this one because I think I would probably say the special person in my life would probably be my parents. And why? Because I mean, they've shown me so much support throughout my college journey, my high school journey. I mean, from day one, they've always been there. Um, and they've always had my back. They've always known that, I can do great things, even when I doubted myself. And I want to say thank you because, that has driven me to do a lot of things, and I think at some points in my life, I could have doubted myself and I could have, strayed away from doing something that could have gotten me somewhere. And an example could be maybe like, let's see, I think when I was going to apply for the counseling position, I was kind of worried. I was like, oh, I don't have very much like mental health experience. Like, I don't know. And they were like, no, like, why wouldn't you be okay for that position? Or why wouldn't you fit that position? And I was like, I don't know. I think I would fit for that position. So, and then I applied and look where I am today. So I think I have to say a lot of thank yous to them. And I can kind of, that bond and that relationship definitely brings me a lot of positive emotions because at the end of the day, like if I'm feeling down, I know that they are there and that's kind of like my support system. And that makes me feel good because I know they're there and I know they're always going to support me.
Yeah, they're there to lift you when you're down, but they're
Right.
also there to challenge you when you need to be challenged.
Exactly. Like they're definitely not going to tell me, things that I'm not capable of. They're not going to be unrealistic. Like they're definitely going to be real with me. And that's also really important. Does anybody else have an example of someone or something that's special in their life?
Hey, I'll go.
Yay.
Yeah, whenever you said your parents, I immediately thought of probably like my grandparents,
Hmm.
my grandmother, probably in particular, just like you, always supportive. I don't think that I would be where I am right now if it wasn't for her, especially just always motivating me. Like I never thought in a million years that I would be in grad school and especially about to graduate.
Yeah.
It just wasn't in the cards for me whenever I was growing up. And she really just like boosted my self-esteem and really gave me um, just all the support that I needed. And even though she kind of terrifies me at the same time, we butt heads, we've gotten in a lot of arguments, but she's someone who will always hold me accountable and will tell me when I'm wrong. She is straight up with me. But I really appreciate that. And I'm glad I have someone in my life who's going to do that, except, and not, not let me push them over or agree with everything I say. She always says what she needs to say. And at the end of the day, I realized she's doing it because she loves me, and I just wouldn't be here
Yeah.
if she didn't do that in the first place.
Yeah, and I think you can probably savor a lot of positive emotions that, you felt from that relationship that's helped you today, probably, in grad school, especially because you're about to graduate. You're kind of reflecting on all the things that kind of got you to where you are. And that can be, that relationship might be really important to your journey.
And I want to just point out both of you, the special people that you have mentioned, I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that just surrounding ourselves with yes people that just agree with us and validate us all the time probably aren't the people who really make the most difference for us. Because you need to have that balance with being challenged to being telling you when you need to stop something or change your perspective or your attitude or behavior. They need to be there to support you, but also guide you and challenge you. So that balanced kind of person in your life, it really helps you be better in whatever ways you might need to be better. So keeping that in mind is important too.
Yeah, definitely have that. I like the challenge. I don't want them to just be like, Alyssa, you can do that. And be like, can I really do that though? Like, okay, well, let's break it down and see what, the pieces that you got to work on. Like, it's good constructive criticism that it's healthy in a relationship. And then this kind of goes back to our little rating, our phrases. And this is for relationships. So I feel connected to people with whom I interact regularly. I feel close to my loved ones. During tough times, there's always someone I can turn to for support. I have relationships that support me in growing and flourishing. There's at least one person in my life who listens well enough to understand my feelings and me. And from Piper and I's examples, I think we can probably, rate these pretty highly, and we're probably pretty high in this category. From our examples. So now we're going on to meaning or purposeful existence. And a sense of meaning and purpose can be derived from belonging to and serving something bigger than yourself. There are various societal institutions that enable a sense of meaning, such as religion, family, science, politics, work, organizations, justice, the community, social causes. And activities that give us a sense of meaning are spending time with family, friends, volunteering, and acts of kindness. And I definitely want to kind of focus on the activities because acts of kindness, volunteering, and spending time with families and friends, those are the things that we kind of, and I don't know about you guys, but when I like volunteer at like my church or something like that, I definitely feel like meaningful. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm doing something that's bigger than me. I'm doing something for other people. And that's like, wow, like, this is something I feel like I'm meant for. And it really does make me feel good. And I can definitely reflect on that and be like, you know what, I remember when I helped them and it makes me want to do it again. And we can kind of tie this into like the exercise that's kind of involved in this. Oops. So what brings meaning to your life? So, oops. So, okay, here we go. Okay, so think about meaningful roles, relationships, activities, or goals, and consider in what parts of your life you're most likely to experience joy, love, laughter, learning, or a sense of purpose. And think about why that role, that relationship, activity, or the goal is so important to you, and what life would be like if you suddenly lost this source of meaning. So, for example, I guess we could probably put in maybe like work. Let's say like this is a very meaningful role to me, which it is. And I think so what parts of this do I experience joy, love, laughter, learning? So I definitely learn something every day. I can definitely say that. And I feel purposeful because, I'm doing this very big project that I feel like I'm going to be impacting a lot of people on campus. And definitely my peers are probably going to be affected by this in hopefully a very positive way. And that really brings me meaning because this is something that I'm very passionate about. It's something, mental health is something that I've struggled with. So I feel like this role, my job really brings meaning to my life. And what would life be like if I suddenly lost this job? I would be very devastated, mainly because, there's a lot of things I would like to do and a lot of impact I think I could bring to the table. And if I lost this, I feel like that it's part of my meaning would kind of, not be there, because this is helping people is definitely part of me. But that's me. Does anybody else have an example?
I mean, I feel the same way when I think about work. It definitely brings me a sense of purpose to feel like I'm making a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for someone who works on a college campus and is committed to the growth and development of students, that's what keeps me going. The day-to-day stuff doesn't, the
Right.
administrative things, the emails, the
Mhm.
different stressors that we have. But if I can look at the big picture and feel like, at least at some point I've made a difference in someone's life, that keeps me going. That's why I got into this, and it
Right.
makes up for the other stressors, hopefully. So I do find a sense of joy when I can see how it's had a positive impact on a student. For example, working in college, I get to watch people graduate and walk on a stage, and I can think of like, wow, I know what they went through and they made it. And
Mhm.
that's satisfying. So that's the thing about meaning, is it's feeling like you're connected to something bigger than yourself and making
Right.
a difference. And
Mhm.
that's, it depends on your job and career. But then there's the personal life things too. Like, I'm not a parent, but I imagine people who are parents, maybe Piper could chime in on being a parent,
Mhm.
how stressful that is, but hopefully meaningful too.
Yeah, and yeah, before I jump into that, what you said, Miss Angie, I think something I struggle with is not looking at the bigger picture. I kind of just go from day to day, and I find myself like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But then, like, I really need to learn how to really take a step back at least every other day and just think, this is why I'm doing this. Like, look what I've done, and seeing people improve through counseling. That's just like the biggest reward to me whenever.
Yeah, and it's easy to get bogged down in all the negatives because it's draining work, it's emotional, it's stressful. And you have to be very intentional sometimes to prevent burnout in a helping profession too. But in any long-term goal that has a lot of stress involved, going to college, same thing, like the day-to-day, the week-to-week, the semester to semester is just, sometimes you feel like you're drowning, right? And you really have to keep your eyes on that long-term vision of who you want to be, what your goals are, and again, what difference do you want to make? It's about achievement, but it's also about just perseverance too,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you can do that every day, but there are those positive psychology strategies of, going to bed each night and thinking about 3 good things that happened today or something to kind of keep your eye on that meaningful part of what you do.
Yeah, I think it might be smart of me to do like weekly gratitudes, like at the end of the week, like what
Yeah.
are all the good things that happened to me this week. And about the parenting thing, I'm still, trying to get the hang of it, but I don't even know how to describe how meaningful it is. I mean, you have somebody that is literally looking and watching and listening to every single thing that you do. And it can be really scary because sometimes you feel like you're messing up, but it's very meaningful, and it's really meaningful that you get to watch them grow and learn new things and things that you actually taught them. Just like the little things like manners and getting compliments from other parents. Like he's so well mannered. He always says yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and that's just like a really big thing for me. That he's just respectful. But
And if
it
you
is
think
very
about the
meaningful.
question on this exercise of about what would happen if you lost that source of meaning.
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't.
like it's stressful to raise a child, to do the cooking and the cleaning and the discipline, and you want to relax and they want something else,
Yeah.
but what would happen if that was not in your life?
I don't know.
It would take a big source of meaning out of
It's
your
like,
life.
I don't want to think about that.
And that's the challenge too, is the most meaningful things for us as human beings are usually also some of the most challenging, but they're worth it, and that's why we do it.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I think that plays a lot into like, utilizing your strengths too, because if if you're utilizing your strengths, you're doing things that you like, doing things that you love, that you enjoy, and it's more meaningful when you're actually engaged into that idea that, of something that you're enjoying doing. So like for me, for work, I'm passionate about helping people in mental health, and that brings meaning to my life because, I enjoy this. It's one of my strengths, and it kind of all ties in together. And I think that's the whole idea, that all of these things are intertwined and they work together. So yes, thank you for sharing, everybody. And then we'll kind of go back to this. So how would you rate these? What I do matters to society. I feel that my life has purpose. I participate in religious or spiritual activities. I do things that contribute to a larger cause, and I use my strengths to help others.
I'm looking at these questions, and I have to remind myself, it depends on where you are in life. So if you're a college student and you're maybe working at McDonald's, putting yourself through college, you may not exactly feel like what I do matters to society right now.
Right.
Granted, you're making a difference with every person you encounter at the checkout counter at McDonald's, just saying, having a good conversation with someone or whatever. But this is also a self-assessment. So like if I'm not really living up to this, maybe even if I am right now not in a full-blown career where I want to be in my life, right now, what can I do to change some of my answers to these questions? And it could be volunteer work or, joining an organization, kind of being committed to a cause, while still working at McDonald's and just going to school,
Yeah.
doing what you need to do every day, but finding some peace in your life of where you can change this to kind of boost that sense of meaning.
Yeah. And I think there's, especially on our college campus, there's a lot of opportunities, to find things that you're interested or passionate about. Different clubs or organizations could definitely be something that you look into. We always have like little donation drives, simple donation that can be kind of you contributing to something larger than you. So that can be something to be mindful of also. Okay. And lastly, we have accomplishments. So realizing goals. So people pursue achievement, competence, success, and mastery for its own sake in a variety of domains, including the workplace, sports, hobbies, etc. And people pursue accomplishment even when it does not necessarily lead to positive emotion, meaning, or relationships. Many of us strive to better ourselves in some way. And accomplishment is another important thing that contributes to our ability to flourish. Because when you do something, you accomplish something big, you feel good about yourself, you feel like you've done something, relatively meaningful, whether it's for you or for somebody else also. An accomplishment and achievement might be the trickiest elements of PERMA, simply because it's very easy to take them too far. So for instance, in many societies, achievement is highly valued. And if we're not busy, it can seem that we're not living up to expectations and living a full life. However, if we continually push ourselves, we can easily run ourselves ragged in pursuit of the next achievement. So I think I can probably definitely relate to this idea that, if I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing enough. Taking time to myself where I have any downtime, I'm like, okay, I could be doing something. I could be doing homework. I could be studying for an exam. And that's kind of, pushing ourselves to the limit where we have to kind of modify that in a healthy way. So let's see if we can go into, I don't know if anybody has an example of that either, of, kind of overdoing the achievement aspect.
I definitely come across people who are, the classic overachiever perfectionist that feels like they have to fill their schedules with things like, I got to be in the debate club. I'm going to take 18 hours. I've got to be part of 3 or 4 organizations on campus, and you have to really be able to step back and take care of yourself too, and not get all of your self-worth from accomplishment, so keeping that in check, as long as it's more internal satisfaction and not trying to impress others or to make up for something you feel you lack in life. It's always good to feel like you're growing and in some ways, and that can also look good on paper if you're adding lots of things, but don't let that define you as your self-worth.
Right.
So keeping that in check is important.
Yes. Let's see, and then we can kind of do this. I don't know why this doesn't pop up. My little notes aren't popping up. Okay, there we go. Okay. So for this exercise, turning adversity into a resource, bring to mind a stressful experience from your past in which you learned something important. So what were you taught about your strengths? What were you taught in regards to coping with stress? And what helped you get through this stressful experience? And how does this experience make you stronger? So I think I can start out with this one. So a stressful experience for me, and this was last semester, was definitely my anatomy class. Just the whole time was just a stressful experience. And definitely probably just taking the exams, but definitely with the exam, like the final exam. So what was I taught about my strengths? I know now that I'm very capable of setting time aside and studying and really engaging and learning the material versus before I was kind of like, I don't get this. There's no way I'm going to get it now. There's no way I'm going to understand it for the exam. But I learned that if I actually really put time aside and put my mind to it, I'm going to understand the information and I'm going to find a way to pass this exam. So what was I taught in regards to coping with stress? I think I told myself multiple times throughout that stressful experience that it's okay if I don't get an a B, a C is fine. But I definitely put a lot more effort. So at least at the end of the day, whatever grade I got, I knew that I studied as hard as I possibly could. I reached out to other resources. I asked other people in class. I went to different sites to help me study and made flashcards. Like I did everything I possibly could. And I reinforced that positive mindset that like, look, you can do this, just do what do what you can, do what you feel like is enough. Um, and what helped me get through this stressful experience and how does this experience make you stronger? I think what helped me was definitely that mindset that like, you can do this. And if you don't get the A that you want, that's still okay because you did everything you possibly could. And this made me stronger because I definitely can take these skills anywhere. I mean, with my other classes, with other exams, any stressful experiences, just have that mindset that like, prepare yourself. And if you've prepared yourself well enough, then, that's the most you can do, just do what you can and do what you feel is right. And I think I found a way to kind of celebrate my accomplishments because I got an A on the exam and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best feeling ever. And that kind of goes back to like the savoring moment. Like I'm always going to look back on that and be like, wow, like I can't believe I did that. Like I got an A on the exam and I was so stressed about that class for the whole semester. So I think that's definitely something that I can use now and it's definitely resourceful for the future. So that's me. If anybody else has an example they like to share.
I'll share one. It's let me try to think. Okay, stressful situation was last week. My son had surgery,
Oh.
and I was so stressed out because I'm doing this online class, and I haven't taken an online class since undergrad, and it's a lot of work. It's really time consuming. It's a lot of assignments that I have to post. I think they're all due on Monday night. And I was freaking out because I didn't know how I was going to get all these assignments done. And I also had to read a book that I have to present tomorrow for a class. And I was like, this is just too much. And so whenever I found out what I had to do, I got everything done that day for my online class. So this week or last week, it was so easy just going through the week because I didn't have to worry about things being due. And I always thought that I was just the biggest procrastinator, but I just kind of like proved to myself, like, you're not a procrastinator. Whenever you have like a big motivator behind it, you get it done. So now I feel like I'm training my brain to think that everything's due on Friday. So my weekend is like stress-free. So I'm just kind of learning to train my brain that way. After this, I will go on my computer and I'm going to finish all my online stuff. I've become, I guess, just looking at time differently.
Oh, that's good.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like definitely time management. I have improved significantly.
Yeah, and that's definitely something you can take anywhere. So that's definitely something. And you have to celebrate that too. You've definitely pulled yourself out of that procrastination and moved forward. So we are proud of you.
Yeah. No, the way I celebrate is laying in bed and watching Netflix.
Well, there you go. You have the time for it. You finished all your stuff.
I'll share a big one for me was when I went through a divorce and I had to move back in with my parents, and I went to counseling, and it was a devastating time in my life, but I decided to go into counseling after that. So I think sometimes these experiences can really change your perspective, your life perspective, and the trajectory that you're on and your journey. And like for me, while I was going through it, it was like the most horrible experience. I just can't even, I lost like 25 pounds and I was just like, my whole life fell apart. But I can also look back now and really think about how much I grew from that, and see how strong I actually was. And I became stronger. I kind of started over, kind of went to rock bottom and rebuilt my life in a way that I wanted to make sure aligned with my needs and who I am. And so I wouldn't trade the growth that I got from that experience, even though I did not want it and I didn't want that change at all. And I think a lot of us can say that about COVID too. It's caused a lot of changes that we did not want in our lives, but all we can do is focus on the future and what is within our control in the future and make changes that we can. And, I wouldn't trade what I learned from that about myself. And I can be really proud of that. I'm a survivor, but I'm also just strong and resilient. And now I can get through it again. And I know a lot of people have been through some kind of breakup that, the first really big breakup that you have, you think you'll never survive. But now, if it happens again, you can make it through that. And so that's what's really amazing. And I think I take everything that I learned from that experience, and I'm able to share that growth with other people too in my work. So that's kind of nice too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. It's something, sometimes all of our stressful experiences and negative experience don't always have to, end negatively. We can take something out of it and, use that in our future. And I think that's really important. Okay, so here we have our little, rating thing. And so for this one we have, I am an ambitious person. The accomplishments of others inspire me to take actions to achieve my personal goals. I have done many things well in my life. When I set a goal, I'm able to accomplish it, and achieving my goals motivates me to accomplish new goals. So this idea of, achievement and accomplishment is important because I think it kind of drives us, to move forward and, achieve our goals and things like that. So I think this, here rating this, accurately and kind of see where we can have to kind of need to work on things. Especially here, I think for me, like I kind of look at these things and I'm like, have I done many well things in my life? When I set a goal, am I able to accomplish it? Yeah, that's something I'm a little bit iffy about. So that might be something I need to work on.
Yeah, I'm just looking at those questions too. And I want to challenge people. The word ambitious sometimes can have a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to, have that. So keep that in mind. You want to have goals and ambitions to who you want to be without it being like, I'm ambitious, like I want to achieve, really reframing that. But also the accomplishments of others inspire me to take actions. I love the word inspire. It's not like seeing other people succeed, making me want to succeed too, but really having inspired action by it, like having mentors or something like that. This just keeps you in check on like, where are you and on track with any goals that you have. I like this one.
Okay. So this is kind of just a visual that kind of breaks down 24 character strengths that kind of tie into 6 categories. And this kind of ties into the idea of values. So if you kind of look, you can kind of see all these characteristics, and you kind of pick ones that you're like, that's something, I really value. That's something I value, and which ties into these like smaller categories. So whichever route you kind of choose, it all kind of ties into this idea that, a life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning ties into the idea of values. You have to live your life with these values in your mind, and that's how you work towards, a life of pleasure, engagement, and meaning. And yeah, I guess the idea that living a life in line with your values helps live a meaningful life. I don't know, Miss Angie, if you want to elaborate on that, but I think it's pretty straightforward that, if, like I said, if you don't like math and you're taking a lot of math courses, that's, you're not really working anything that's meaningful towards you because you don't like math. You're not going to be engaged. You're not going to have any positive emotions about it. You're definitely not creating a relationship with math if you don't like it. It's probably harder to achieve things and, find flow. That's just kind of a broad example. I don't know if Miss Angie, you had anything to add to
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think a lot of the character strengths remind us that you're not going to be, it's not so much about skills and strength so much as it's important to you. It's your values. And so while math might not be important to me per se, if I have to take math in order to get a degree to be a doctor because I want to go to medical school to help people and be a surgeon, algebra, like in and of itself, may not make a whole lot of sense. But if it's a step toward a different goal, then finding a way to frame it to align with your values will help you get through it. If you just continue to have a negative attitude about it, it's kind of hard. You got to remind yourself why you're here and why you're doing this. But I also think, if you take one of these assessments where it rates your character strengths from lowest to highest, I want to remind people it's not that you don't possess that strength. Like, I don't know, zest is at the bottom of mine when I take this. Well, it's like maybe I have my moments of zest, but it's not important to me. What's important to me is prudence, which is at the top and kind of boring, but but fairness and honesty, those are some of my tops. And if I'm not living a life aligned with those values, then it impacts my well-being. So that's the other thing to think about when it comes to values and character strengths is making sure that if you're straying off track from your values, to just revisit that. Where in your life are you not aligned with your values? Because it will impact your emotional well-being. So this is a reminder for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Just realigning everything to your values to, make sure you're working towards that bigger goal. If that makes sense.
For example, if honesty is in my top few values, and somewhere in my life maybe I need to have a tough conversation with someone that I'm avoiding. And for me a little bit, it's not that I'm being dishonest, but I need to have a direct conversation about something, and until I do, I'm struggling, emotionally or whatever. So it's going to impact me in a lot of ways until I get back on track to align in that space.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, Ms. Angie. Let's see, go. Okay, so to kind of tie everything together, this idea of PERMA and the concept of well-being, and that it has a lot of benefits on our well-being. And we have that you perform better at work, we have more satisfying relationships, you're more cooperative, have stronger immune systems, have better physical health, live longer, have reduced cardiovascular mortality, have fewer sleep problems, have lower levels of burnout, have greater self-control, have better self-regulation and coping abilities, and are more pro-social. So kind of just the idea that this is all meaningful and that this all has a purpose. And it's also, it's good for you, in simple terms, that it's not just, just so you can feel happy. There's a lot more tied into this idea of the PERMA and all of these categories. So are you permalicious? And this is kind of just a cute way of kind of tying everything and wrapping everything up. But, kind of take away like those little statements and how can you rate yourself? Are you, do you have positive emotions? Are you engaged? What about your positive relationships, meaning and accomplishments? Just the whole PERMA scale, kind of put yourself in those categories and see, kind of rate yourself and see what you need improvement on, what you can work on. And yeah, just kind of live that, try to thrive versus surviving. That is all I have to say. Miss Angie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just be permalicious.
Be permalicious. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much
Yeah,
it.
but focus on, these are things that certainly are going to help your personal well-being, but I think it'll help you in your life in a lot of ways, and the people in your life, and help you achieve your goals. So
Yeah.
who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, it's a good way to just apply to your life for the good, for the better. Well, that is all I have to say. Well, thank you everybody for chiming in. We'll have another one next week. It's the science of food and mood, I believe.
In a couple of weeks, I think.
A couple of weeks. Okay, yeah. But yeah, thank you everybody for being here. And I think do I just end it? Oh, we have somebody also. Oh, let's see. Cindy wrote in the chat. This was really great. Thanks, Alyssa. You definitely made me think about some tweaks I need to make in my life to become more permalicious. Gotta let all of this marinate. Well, thank you. Awesome. I'm glad you got something out of this. That made me feel a lot better. I'm definitely gonna remember that. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody and have a great day. See, I don't know how to get out of this. Stop recording.